DEI Star Wars gets canceled, merchandise deleted as Hollywood panics. Yes, the Acolyte has failed and has been canceled by Disney. There will not be another season of this DEI Star Wars show. From Deadline, the Acolyte canceled. No season 2 for Disney Plus's Star Wars series. And what just came out is that fans are getting concerned. This is from Forbes. Fans fear the Acolyte may be deleted entirely for a Disney tax write-off. The show being deleted entirely would be Disney removing the show from Disney Plus. They have done that before with shows like Willow. Here's where they canceled Willow. In its content purge, the media company pulled off more than 50 titles from Disney Plus and Hulu, including series Willow, The Mysterious Benedict Society, and Dollface, and movies such as The One and Only Ivan. The Willow was a flop. Disney had several flops. Other streaming services had flops too. The tax write-off is this. They tell the government, hey, nobody wants to watch this show. We thought they'd want to watch it for at least 5 to 10 years, but nobody's really watching it, so we think it's worthless to us now. We thought it was worth something, but it's clearly worth nothing. And as a result, we want to consider it an expense right now. That makes their short-term profit look better. But that does mean they have to cancel the show and pretty much not sell the show in the way they used to sell the show. This isn't just done in entertainment, it's done throughout industry. And Acolyte fans, yeah, there are a couple of them, not that many, are starting to notice in Disney's online store, they're actually pulling Acolyte merchandise. And on that basis, it's freaking them out that, yeah, maybe Disney is going to just pull the show. They should pull the show. It didn't represent Star Wars well. It wasn't well received. It was ill-conceived and poorly written, with a desperate attempt to try to get people to accept an ideological agenda. From Games Radar, the Acolyte's apparent removal from Disney's online store has Star Wars fans fearing it's about to become lost media. Just days after the Acolyte's cancellation, Star Wars fans have noticed that merchandise from the series has seemingly been removed from Disney's online store, and it has them fearing the worst. And it should. It makes sense. The items they will keep in their store are their relevant properties. The things they're not going to promote anymore, like The Acolyte, like Willow, why would you have them in your online store? They're just taking up space. And Hollywood is starting to get concerned. With all of Star Wars series kind of wrapping up, and with Deadpool working out, and Marvel getting rebooted, and Inside Out 2 working out, and Pixar getting rebooted, and other Disney franchises getting on track, what happens if Star Wars gets on track and they wipe away all the woke nonsense? They sure seem like they're getting set up for something. Over at Forbes, with the Acolyte canceled, almost every Disney Plus Star Wars series is ending. Isn't that interesting? Every Disney Plus Star Wars series, all the nonsense that nobody really likes, is getting wrapped up. Isn't Lucasfilm really the last franchise over at Disney that is still being ruined? Are they really going to launch more content, more movies, more TV shows that are so off-brand that don't match Star Wars to try to push an agenda? Or are those days over? It's starting to look like those days are over. Here's some panic from IndieWire. The Acolyte tried something new. Its cancellation doesn't bode well for the future of Star Wars. Leslie Headland's show was flawed, but it expanded what Star Wars could be. Without big swings like that, it's hard to know where Star Wars goes from here. You know, you could just make things that are similar to the feeling and the themes and the brand that everyone expects when you say Star Wars. That really wouldn't be such a wild thing to do. They did it at Marvel. They're doing it over at Pixar. They could just do it at Lucasfilm. It's not that difficult to do a Star Wars show that Star Wars people would actually like. You just take out the nonsense and then you put the good stuff back in. Let the Force be the Force. Let the good guys be good guys and let the bad guys be bad guys. Don't tell us what our genders should be. Don't try to encourage us to utilize pronouns. Don't try to make a whole new back history for Star Wars that has lesbian witches creating Jedis or whatever they're doing. Just go back to what is good about Star Wars and keep it good. That's literally all they did with Inside Out 2. It's literally all they did with Deadpool and Wolverine. There is every indication that as of San Diego Comic-Con just weeks ago, Lucasfilm was planning on a future for the Acolyte. Instead, on August 19th, Deadline first reported that the Disney Plus Star Wars prequel series was canceled. If your fans don't really feel like you've got a handle on where the franchise is for any property, how would you dare have the audacity to go into a prequel series in the first place? Tell the story of what came before what we know as the franchise brand. Why would you do that? You completely set yourself up for failure. So it's strange that at Comic-Con on July 26th, the annual Stories from a Galaxy Far, Far Away panel showed that Lucasfilm Publishing had invested a great deal in the Acolyte, with multiple new tie-in books and comics related to the show. So where did the Acolyte go wrong? Well, from Screen Rant, where the Acolyte went wrong. And no, it wasn't going woke. Yes, it was going woke, because woke does not respect story structure. It's not even about respecting brands, which is also incredibly important. It's a major multiplier. But woke content tells you that representation, skin color, sexual preference, religious affiliation is storytelling. It is not. Storytelling has to make a point. It has to start somewhere and then end somewhere. Like when you tell your friend what you did last weekend. That actually is a story. If you tell someone you identify as white, that's not a story. That's a physical characteristic. Screen Rant goes on to explain some of the structural problems in the story, and these are valid structural problems, but if this wasn't a woke series, it wouldn't have these problems. Star Wars has decided not to renew The Acolyte for a second season, but it isn't because the show went woke. Yes, it is. The Acolyte was the most recent addition to the Star Wars movies and TV shows, and although it thrillingly introduced a new era of the Star Wars timeline on screen, it was met with very mixed reception from the beginning. In fact, many of the Acolyte's controversies began before the show even premiered. Because of how they promoted the show, they brought this on themselves. They didn't respect the fans, and they made it clear they didn't respect the fans. If you're a restaurant and you don't respect your customers, it's not going to work out so well. Because of its controversies, there was significant speculation about whether or not The Acolyte would continue to a second season. Many believed that the show would be renewed, not only because the Acolyte finale left a number of mysteries hanging in the balance, but also because the Acolyte showrunner, Leslie Headland, heavily teased the second season in interviews, which of course she shouldn't have done as a professional. She should have waited to hear what Disney had to say about it. Because they're funding it. Because even though she'd get paid a lot of extra money for making another terrible season of Star Wars shows, it's inappropriate to promote a second season when you don't know what Disney's decision is. Now, with the news that The Acolyte is not returning for another season, there has come rampant speculation that it was the show's supposed wokeness that led to its poor performance. However, The Acolyte had several legitimate issues, and none of them had to do with diversity. So the premise here on Screen Rant is, look, the show was terrible all by itself. It didn't even get to the wokeness part. No, it got to the wokeness part first, and then the rest of the execution was terrible. If you wanted to have a gay character or consider different takes on Star Wars, you could do any of that. All of that's fine. Skin color doesn't matter. Completely viable. A female lead, no problem. But you have to write the show well. And you have to respect what the fans expect they're going to get when they spend time watching your show. And here's what some of the writing problems were on The Acolyte according to Screen Rant. It wasn't clear whose story The Acolyte was. So you don't know who the protagonist is. You don't know who we're going to watch and follow. Did you ever see Breaking Bad? Did you ever see Better Call Saul or the original Star Wars? It's quite clear who's the main character. Who's got that main character energy that we're following throughout the story. There may be reasons for why they did this, but structurally, it's not acceptable. It should never have been approved. And when it comes to this kind of agenda-type storytelling, the woke storytelling, they usually have a tremendous amount of freedom and no one's watching them. No one's checking them. No one's saying, let me see your work to see that you've actually put together something that is fundamentally structurally viable. And in The Acolyte, they didn't do that. But partly you don't do that because it's representation storytelling, not actual storytelling. Major reveals took too long. Well, again, it's a structural issue. It's a professional issue to deliver something that has The proper strategic planning in place so that your audience can just sit down, suspend disbelief, and watch what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing. They shouldn't have to struggle to figure out what's going on. And lastly, the Acolyte leaned too heavily on a second season. You can't leave multiple cliffhangers open. Each season needs to really be a complete piece. If it's not, you ruin the show. But also, when the characters aren't advancing, when they're not accomplishing anything, or regressing in a major way by the end of a season, it's a poorly structured show. If they had concentrated more on storytelling and less on representation, it could have worked out. We all know why this unprofessional nonsense was thrown onto a quality brand like Star Wars. They got what they deserved. But crucially, from CBR.com, Disney canceling The Acolyte sends a bad message in the entertainment industry. Can you guess what that message is? That garbage shows that rely on people's skin color and sexual preferences are really not something that you should actually spend money and time on, that you should just get back to whatever your brand represents. And aside from that, if you don't have an amazing brand and you're doing something new, just actually make it good and structurally sound. Only a month after its finale, The Acolyte has been added to the list of television shows canceled too soon. No, it should have been canceled before it started, but let's continue. Disney and Lucasfilm have decided not to go forward with The Acolyte Season 2, a Star Wars show that divided fans so horrendously. It made non-Star Wars fans question what was so controversial about the series. The negative uproar about the series was the exact controversy itself. The Acolyte tried something new and out of the box, and some people didn't like it. It was off-brand, which means it didn't match what you expected when you watched the Star Wars show. It was poorly structured. I said that, but even Screen Rant that's trying to defend The Acolyte is saying, no, actually, it was really poorly structured. You didn't know who the main character was. You waited too long for major reveals. You relied too heavily on there will be a second season to tie up your nonsensical loose ends. And here's the messaging they're so worried about. People object to people of color, LGBT, and female stories in big franchises. That is not at all true. But you still have to do the stories well. Not everyone is so obsessed with race that if they see a race on a TV screen, or if they see a certain race in a movie, all of a sudden they will like it. It doesn't work for white people, and it doesn't work for black people either. I can't see how do they not get this? How much more do you need to see? This Star Wars series was the first to be created and written by a woman, Leslie Headland, specifically a queer woman who felt it was important to have queer representation in The Acolyte. Okay, but that isn't really what Star Wars is about, so if you're going to introduce an element like that, you better make sure the rest of it is really, really well done. However, many fans took this as a checking off the box narrative. There are several people of color in major roles, 2 female protagonists, a queer witch coven, and a sexy romantic storyline, but the show was far from checking off a box. Every character had a purpose and was naturally integrated into this galaxy. The same galaxy so far, far away that it is supposedly enormous, but it feels incredibly small with a lack of inclusivity in its movies and its TV shows. No, it never actually did feel small. It always felt very expansive when you were watching original Star Wars movies. In certain scenes, in the military, in a number of things, yes. You didn't have a wildly different cast in terms of their skin colors and their genders and their sexual preferences. You don't actually need that. All you need is a good story. We watch animated characters. We watch sometimes ducks talking to chickens. That's a story. It can be a story. It just has to be well written. And again, this could send another dangerous message to the entertainment industry, that Star Wars isn't ready to expand its horizons. Star Wars is still in the mindset that all fans want are more Skywalker saga stories. Well, whatever fans actually want, you could actually ask those fans and maybe they'd tell you with words, or they could type it to you in an email or respond to a poll. Ask fans what they want, don't assume. But yeah, if they want Skywalker stories, then you give them Skywalker stories. People want to see a Deadpool 4 now. Why? Because they like Deadpool 3. That's not a crime. That's just, what do people actually want? You like pizza? We're going to sell you pizza. That's what you're supposed to do. Trying to force people to like things that they don't like never works. And lastly, TV shows aren't given time to find their footing. In general, streaming services are too careless when it comes to canceling shows. There is no streaming service that is careless when it cancels a show. They may be careless about your feelings. They're not thinking about your feelings necessarily. They spent like more than $200 million to make The Acolyte. That is supposed to get a return on investment. It's at least supposed to get people interested in watching the show. You can picture someone sitting with a checkbook saying, look, I'm going to write this check for $200 million. All I want you to do is just watch this TV show. You don't even have to really pay that much attention to it. Yes, you can have popcorn. You can have a drink. You can walk away from the show sometimes, but please do come back and watch it. Maybe even talk about it on social media, but watch at least some of it. That's all they want you to do. But if you're not going to watch it and you don't like it and it's not entertaining and it's not worth your time, the streaming service can't just keep spending money on making shows for you that you don't want to watch. It's the same reason I can't get a chicken cutlet sandwich at Wendy's anymore. They weren't selling enough of them. I used to be able to know I could at least go into Wendy's if I didn't want something fried, get a chicken cutlet sandwich. It was fine. A friend of mine named Karen told me those chicken sandwiches are actually made of rubber. And I said, I don't think it's rubber. I mean, it's not great. And she said, no, part of the formulation has some rubber consistency to it. It's not like all just chicken. I didn't care. It was a good sandwich. It was good enough at the time. It had my interest. It was worth more money to me than the money in my pocket. But Wendy's couldn't sell enough of those sandwiches, so they had to cancel them because they go bad too quickly. The fried ones don't go bad so quickly. What does this mean? This means when I go to Wendy's, I get a son of the Baconator. It's a bacon cheeseburger. We could be seeing the end of DEI Star Wars. I can't see them spending more money on a new Star Wars concept, more time and resources on a new Star Wars concept that's just going to push diversity and political messaging and things that don't match what people expect when they go to see Star Wars. They thought, look, if we just keep doing this year after year after year after year, eventually people will give up and they'll accept this. Oh, this is Star Wars. No, this is a mess. The Acolyte is a mess. People aren't interested in it. DEI Star Wars is not going to replace regular Star Wars. For any of us who are Star Wars fans, we just consider it fan fiction. Something just made up that's not part of what Star Wars really is or ever really was or ever really would be. Marvel with Deadpool and Wolverine. Pixar with Inside Out 2. Disney's own animation unit with Moana 2. Lucasfilm is the last holdout. Let's see how long they can hold out. I don't think it's going to be for all that long. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.